The California Technology Council's new CTC Benefits Trust combines groups of emerging technology companies to offer large company benefits to small businesses. This approach delivers employee benefit programs with better choices and at a lower cost. What's included? Medical, dental, and vision options are available with additional employer and employee online resources to support simplified enrollment and administration. To learn more, go to californiatechnology.org/join. That's californiatechnology.org/join. I'm Daniel Levine, and this is the Bio Report. As biomedical data proliferates and the life sciences becomes more closely integrated with data science, the ability for researchers to access, use, and learn from the growing universe of information requires new tools. InveniAI is seeking to address this need with its artificial intelligence platform for biopharmaceutical companies to both monitor innovation and to enhance their own drug development capabilities. We spoke to Krishnan Nandabalan, President and CEO of InveniAI, about the company, how its artificial intelligence platform is being used, and what he expects the ultimate payoff from this technology will be. Krishnan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. A pleasure to join you.
We're going to talk about InveniAI, how it's bringing artificial intelligence to its pharmaceutical partners, and what the opportunity is for AI to change drug development. Listeners may remember not long ago we had Vimal Mehta on the show to talk about BioXcel Therapeutics, and perhaps you can begin there with the relationship between InveniAI and BioXcel.
Thank you very much, Danny, and that's a very relevant question. In fact, InveniAI and BioXcel Therapeutics are like two peas in a pod. we rose from the same parent company, BioXcel Corporation. BioXcel Corporation came into existence in 2005, primarily as a venture to help pharma and biotech companies to prioritize their drug portfolios, mainly to, in terms of innovative medicines to address unmet medical needs. And to do that, we had to learn how to grapple with not only voluminous amounts of data, but also different types of data. Right? And when you're trying to actually look at clinical data, genomic data, commercial data, patient response data, and trying to actually see where it is that a potential new mechanism can be applied to, what hurts you the most is not knowing everything. And as we went through several iterations of this through our life of the company, we realized that it became humanly impossible to keep track of everything. There are more than 5,000 publications a day. It's not just the publications, it's the underlying data. It's both structured and unstructured, chemical, pharmacological, clinical, biochemical, molecular, and even some real-world data, and you had to use all of this. And that is where AI came in. And so we started using artificial intelligence-based methods, primarily neural networks, to analyze everything in real time so that we were able to not miss out on anything. And while we were doing this, we realized that we had a way to So we had two things going for us. One is we were inventing and discovering ways to actually apply these marvelous technologies in drug discovery and development. And while we were doing that, we also realized that we could do some drug repositioning, re-innovation on our own. And so that is how we started our own programs, especially in the area of neuroscience, where there's a lot of unmet need, and as well as in oncology, more specifically immuno-oncology. And we generated our own pipeline, and we realized very soon that we had two very divergent but related businesses. One which had its own drug pipeline and had to focus on developing those, and the other which was more in adapting and innovating on technologies that could be applied in life sciences in general, and more specifically in drug discovery. And that's how those two companies came to be. BioXcel Therapeutics inherited the pipeline and became more specifically oriented towards developing those candidate drugs that were identified using the AI-based technology, whereas InveniAI inherited the technology platform as well as the collaborative research that we had with several other companies. And so InveniAI focuses on innovating in terms of how to apply AI-based methods, not only in drug discovery and development, but innovation across life sciences and also across other industries.
What's the business model? Are you fee for service? Do you have a subscription model? Do you share in the upside of what customers are able to do with your technology in some way?
Great question. We have two main business models. The first is a subscription model. So we have a platform we call AlphaMeld. This is an innovation detection model. So if you think of any breakthrough innovation, right? So like the breakthrough of immunotherapy in cancer, right? Or the breakthrough of targeting PCSK9 for dyslipidemia, or right now what's going on in NASH in terms of FXR agonists and so on. They all have a certain fingerprint to them. You first see a breakout in basic science, then that's replicated in translational science, in validated animal models, and also in the clinic. And then you see commercial activities starting around it, companies are formed, collaborations happen, and so on. So you can actually map out this pattern and then have the neural networks look for similar patterns across various data points. And you can then do this on real-time basis as long as you are, you're ensuring that you can access the data and not missing out on anything. And all the time, as you're monitoring innovation, the nature of innovation itself changes, right? So Opdivo and Keytruda, the leading immunotherapy approved drugs, were innovative 4 years ago. They're not so innovative now because they're accepted as standard of care now. So the next innovation is going to be a combination and so on. So the nature of innovation itself changes, and so it becomes more important to monitor all the data and define innovation really in a real-time manner. And this is what AlphaMeld does. And we have been working with some of the leading big pharmas in optimizing this, and they subscribe to it. So that's one business model. The other business model is then more on the traditional drug discovery collaborations, because we have been working in applying AI to really understand the relationship between targets. So I'm talking about molecular targets here, proteins, for example, their role in disease progression or response to drugs, and also the drugs themselves. And where there is an intersection of all these three, you want to actually identify that even when the connections are not that obvious, right? So when the connections are obvious, everyone knows it, but it's usually after the fact. So when these connections are removed beyond the obvious, so they're hidden or they're indirect, that is where AI becomes really useful in detecting these connections. But this involves, it's not just monitoring anymore. This involves building networks, testing those networks to see if it matches what we know about what needs to be done to address a particular endpoint in a disease, So it's a very collaborative process between InveniAI and our collaborators. So in those types of collaborations, there is an upfront fee. Then, if we succeed, which usually means that the collaborator accepts the concept and then moves it to a proof of concept stage. And if they succeed, we get a milestone payment. And then as it progresses along, through various stages, we continue to get rewards. And finally, when it enters the market, of course, we have been in existence as InveniAI only for the last 2.5 years. So we still have to see a drug getting approved in the marketplace. But we're getting there. BioXcel Therapeutics is advancing in the clinic, their products. But we also have our other collaborators like KHK, which is a Japanese company. They are using our technology and collaboration to identify the best disease indications for their internal pipelines. And we have been working with Centrexion for the last 3 years. This is a company that is working in the area of pain. And if you go to their website, you can learn more about them. But we collaborate very closely with them. We identified the disease indications that they can move some of their compounds to. And it was very gratifying to see that they have not only advanced into phase 2, but they have recently announced a deal with another big pharma based on the programs that we have been working with them. So these are the two main programs. AlphaMeld is for a subscription-based access to monitor developments to identify breakthrough infections, and the outcome of that and using that in a more traditional collaborative research, we have a combination of upfront fees and downstream milestones and royalties.
You talk about this not being a cookie cutter solution. There's a role here to use this to leverage a user's expertise and experience. How exactly does that work, and what's the role of the user in applying your AI platform?
Oh, absolutely. That's a great, very intuitive of you to actually, hit upon that. So there's a lot of, buzz about AI and machine learning, but it is absolutely dependent on how the user uses it. So there are at least two places where it absolutely depends on the user as to how to mold this process. So at the very beginning, the user has to define the question properly, right? So what is it that you want to be done? Are you looking for the right target to go after in a disease? Are you looking for or you're already focused on a target and because you have studied the disease very well and you know that this target has to be attacked. So then the question is what's the best way of doing that? And or it's a combination of the two, and what's the best modality? Do you want a small molecule inhibitor, or is it going to be an RNAi or a gene therapy or so on? So you can kind of lay the groundwork and define it's almost like defining the landscape, saying these are all the areas in which I need to gather data and build the networks to see what exists, what's the white space there, and how can I arrive at the nuggets that are going to get me to a drug that will solve my problem. So that's at one. Then you go through. That's where AI kicks in. Now you have these automated processes that are much more efficient than any human being, but they're done by the questions that were defined by the experts, right? So you now go through it iteratively and recursively. What I mean by that is you don't just do it again and again, but every time you do it a little differently, in that you're avoiding mistakes and increasing the focus of the analysis until you reach a point where you don't get anything more from an automated process. What that means is that the space that needs to be searched has been searched, and you are now at you have reduced the complexity that needs to be examined by the expert. So this is where again the domain experts come in. So they now know, okay, So now instead of millions of data points, I'm looking at just hopefully dozens, maybe even hundreds. But that's much better than looking at millions. And now I know, based on my experience in drug discovery and development, whether it's in oncology or neuroscience or cardiovascular or infectious, these are the important things that need to be addressed, and how does it fit in. So like you said, it's not a cookie cutter solution. It depends on the type of problem you're tackling, the complexity of the drug bank in your kitty, the drugs in your kitty that you're trying to use, the diseases that you're going after, the common diseases where the endpoints are well defined are different from rare diseases where the endpoints sometimes may not be well defined, and you're trying to solve them in a very different way. So indeed, the user input is as valuable as the AI. So the way we at InveniAI look at AI is it's a multiplier, it's a magnifier of the human ingenuity that already exists in our drug discovery scientists.
All of this is algorithm driven. How have you validated the algorithms, and do you expect to refine them over time, or have they now been kind of fixed as what they are?
The algorithms are constantly evolving, right? So this is what I meant by your the definition of what is an innovation changes over time, right? So your current standard of care, you can't go back. So the algorithms are driven by a current standard of care in any disease. So you want to get better than that. In some cases, like in some orphan diseases, there may be no standard of care. You're just treating the symptoms, or just managing the symptoms. In which case, anything is good. But in other cases, there will be already drugs approved. In which case, you can't go back. I mean, you have to get better than those. So the algorithms are always derived from current standard of care, the current status of knowledge in a disease, the current status of knowledge of the agents that are used for therapy, and the current diagnostic agents used to diagnose the condition. And then you're looking for things that are more, right? That actually are addressing things, the needs of in that disease population that are currently not met. And so the innovative part about the algorithm is constantly changing. Maybe it doesn't change every day, but it does change as soon as a new drug gets approved or fails. Both of those have an impact on the algorithms, because the more we learn, we'll have to then go back and ensure that is incorporated into the algorithm. It's not that just a drug succeeded or failed. It's all the data associated with how a drug succeeds or fails. So there are all these endpoints that were measured with the drug. And do you understand how and why it succeeded, or do you understand how and why it failed? And what can we learn from that and looking for the next best thing? So all of this it's a constant process.
Where do you think the biggest opportunity for you is to add value in the discovery and development process and make things faster, better, cheaper?
So we are seeing two big time opportunities, and this is like much better today than it was, or much more accepted today than it was even 2 years ago. So the two biggest opportunities that we are at InveniAI are seeing is that one is in identifying the best disease indication for your program, right? So if, companies have already they have a drug of a particular modality. They could have it could be an antibody, it could be a small molecule, it could be an RNAi, and usually these targets, unless it's a monogenic hereditary disease, Mendelian disease, usually these targets have some evidence, the association of the target to the disease, but it's never to just one disease. It's usually to a set of related diseases. It's usually addressing a particular type of symptom, and this is especially true of complex diseases like diabetes, or rheumatoid arthritis, or systemic lupus erythematosus, or things like that, where it's not very simple. And the biggest impact that we are having through our collaborations is that it's better to apply AI to ensure that you're not missing anything. There are no blind spots. You've considered everything. You indeed know that the mechanism of action you think is true. You're addressing the right target, and there is no liability to that target, and you looked at all the evidence, and this is all in silico, right? You're not doing any it's much cheaper and faster to do this before you start, for example, a human clinical program, which runs into typically somewhere between at the least 75 million to 500 million to $1 billion, depending on the type of clinical program you're going for. So that is a big impact we're seeing on the one hand. On the other hand, in terms of re-innovation of drugs, so there are by some estimates between 2,000 to 4,000 drugs that all have some human proof of concept data, right? So these are drugs that are safe to varying degrees, but safe meaning they were safe enough to get past phase 1 and to enter phase 2. And in phase 2 they underperformed, or they didn't meet their primary endpoint, and they're all stuck. And it's usually they don't meet the primary endpoint because we do not know enough about the human condition. So you prove the drug works in an animal model. You show that it's safe in phase 1, and phase 2 it doesn't meet its primary endpoint. This happens all the time, and that's because we don't know enough about the disease until we actually enter human clinical trials. But as time progresses and as more research progresses, there's lots of data being gathered on the same diseases and on related diseases. This is where AI comes in really handy. So now you know that a drug that may have been worked on 5 years ago and didn't provide the more stellar results, or even failed. Now it turns out that that may actually be applicable in this related indication for this other endpoint, because we now know a lot more about these the phenomenology, the pathology, the pathophysiology, and hence can come up with a more rational explanation of the mechanism of action. So these are the two obvious areas we see applications for this approach. There is a third area that we actually stumbled upon. I'll be the first to confess on that, which is, as we were developing these algorithms to detect breakthroughs, it became clear that this was a universal problem of separating signal from noise, right? So in some ways you can imagine this as identifying a signal. In this case, signal being a drug that actually has a desired impact, and there is the information that actually telling you that, compared to all the related information which may be about same drug or the targets or the related targets or related diseases, but they don't really give you that final gem of an idea. So it's how you detect that signal. And once we focused on that and came up with a way to actually detect that signal, we realized that this can be used across, first of all, adjacencies. So it's not just in drug discovery. You can go and look at it in consumer healthcare, for example. You can look at it in animal health, because animal health product development actually is not as expansive as the human drugs, but it follows along similar lines. But then you can also start thinking of this in terms of food and nutrition, medical foods, digital health, in terms of coming up with products that are not perhaps regulated, but nevertheless are very useful in monitoring wellness and health, and can be used to help patients in managing their lives, and so on. So we really believe that this is just the beginning of the use of such approaches and technologies across these industries in identifying signal, meaning innovation or solutions, and then finding the best home for them so that the patients and the consumers can get access to this in a timely and finally in an inexpensive manner.
Krishnan Nandabalan, President and CEO of InveniAI. Krishnan, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. The Bio Report is a production of the Levine Media Group. To automatically download this podcast each week, subscribe to our RSS feed or through iTunes or other podcast manager. To join our mailing list, go to levinemediagroup.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to drop us a line or are interested in sponsoring this podcast, send an email to danny@levinemediagroup.com. Special thanks to Jonah Levine, who composed our theme music, and the Jonah Levine Collective, which performs it.